Welcome to The Herd Mentality, an eclectic weekly mix of atheistic and humanistic conversations with complete strangers. I've never met them and they've never met me, but we're throwing caution to the wind, taking a risk with a dodgy internet connection, and God willing, get an interesting conversation for you to listen to. I'm your host, Questionable Adam, at Adam Reeks on Twitter, and it's time to meet our guests. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Herd Mentality, and with me today I have at Secular Lad, who's not Secular Bloke's son, in no way related whatsoever, we can tell this from the accent. Secular Lad, hello.
Hello, Adam.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from.
I am from England, ex-Jehovah's Witness.
Mm-hmm. Whereabouts in England?
Sort of in between Bristol and Bath.
Oh, so you're not far from Franco Soup.
You know what? I've just made a massive mistake. I'm that nervous. I'm in between Bristol and Birmingham.
Oh, the other way. Okay.
The other way, yeah.
Look, don't worry about this. I'll edit that out. I won't really.
Yeah,
I'm going to leave it in there.
Thank you.
So, okay, you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness. They have JWs in England.
Yeah, there's plenty of us.
Yeah, right. And that's how we got in touch with each other.
Yeah, I saw you reading up about JWs and decided that I would offer my services as an ex-JW to maybe explain some things that people don't know and give my experience.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you for coming on. So how ex-JW are you?
It was only a year ago that I sort of decided that I no longer believed that it was the truth.
So you came to that conclusion overnight, or was this a long-term thing?
Well, I've always had certain questions, and they were always smaller questions, things that I could kind of shrug off as not being important to the bigger picture, so to speak. So it confused me, for example, that there was a spinning sword outside of the Garden of Eden, but it didn't make too much difference to me because although wars hadn't been invented and therefore swords wouldn't have been invented, it was probably just something. There would be an explanation, and I never got one, but I always assumed that this isn't that important. But then one day, I remember reading the Noah's Ark account, and it wasn't sort of the atrocity of mass genocide of the human race that did it. For me, that made me question it. It was at the end of the story, it said that God gave the rainbow to promise that he would never flood the world again. And I just had a thought, just one thought that sounds a lot like people that didn't understand how rainbows are formed, trying to explain rainbows. And I guess that was the start of the questioning. And it went on from there. And yeah.
Once you begin to analyze the theories or the stories within, it begins to fall apart. Things begin to crumble.
Absolutely. And all the old things that I'd maybe thought before but never criticized or looked at skeptically, they came to the forefront, and they became bigger issues. But I wasn't willing to sort of throw it all in straight away. I looked into things, and a lot of things there are answers to. The witnesses are fairly logical. When you looking at the Bible, you can reason out the things that the witnesses believe, almost absolutely. But when you start to look at things scientifically, things don't add up.
What resources did you lean on at the time?
So at the time, there's a CD-ROM, as it's known, the Watchtower Library and Tract Society on the computer, and it basically links all of your, like, the Bible to the Watchtowers, and then you can look at different sources from other books and publications that they've produced. And I was using that mainly. And I got to a point where I was reading the things and I wasn't accepting them anymore. Things about free will and determination especially. I just couldn't follow the logic of what the witnesses believed. So I started to, against all advice that's ever given you, I started to look at more secular things. I was looking at, I remember one of the first people that I came across was Christopher Hitchens, his debates against somebody Turk, I can't remember who it was. And I hadn't got a clue sort of about logical fallacies or any debating techniques.
Yeah, the Jehovah's Witnesses, from what I understand, are a very insular community.
Exceptionally.
Yeah.
I asked for a study. I started feeling less spiritually strong, not deconverted, but less spiritually strong. And I asked for a study, and I asked for my questions to sort of be answered by an elder who I respected a lot. And he's a very intelligent man. But he would put the small things sort of to one side. But because they were in my head no longer small things, these were things that I couldn't just brush aside. And so that made a difference. And as you you don't want to look at secular sources as a witness because you're told so many times over and over again that you can't look at what's called apostate material, which is anything which goes against the witness's view of either the Bible or the things that they teach at all.
Apostate material, there's a lot of apostate material out there.
Well, anything in a scientific journal pretty much would be considered apostate, I guess. But there are a lot of ex-witnesses that really go to town in showing why the witnesses are wrong.
I had the JWs pop round to my place for coffee several times, in fact.
That's right.
And
they probably kept calling on you.
Well, they did. But
he's interested.
They give me, I think they've given me a bit of breathing room now because, and I wasn't aware of this at the time, they couldn't read apostate material because I've got nothing but apostate material in the herd mentality dungeon, and wanted to give them a run through on what it's like out there in the real world. But I did happen to know that the Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate birthdays. And I pulled this up, and the guy actually looked really sad. I felt really sorry for him. Tell me more about that.
So birthdays are... I was just talking to my dad about this tonight, actually. But birthdays have certain paganistic roots that the witnesses don't want any part of. I've got the reasoning book here, which is the book they've probably showed you, maybe? Did they get that out at all?
I got about 30 books and brochures and magazines off them.
Wow.
And
that sounds about right.
I've given them the best shot I can in the time I had. Mm-hmm. I don't recall that one specifically.
Okay. Well, the reasoning book is the one that they use on the ministry if they don't know the answer to a question. So rather than me saying roughly what I remember, I can read little portions of this, if you like, to sort of give people an idea. So it's the customs that surround birthdays as much as anything. So it says, and this is a quote, "The various customs with which people today celebrate their birthdays have a long history. Their origins lie in the realm of magic and religion. The customs of offering congratulations, presenting gifts, and celebrating, complete with lighted candles in ancient times, were meant to protect the birthday celebrant from the demons and to ensure his security for the coming year."
What they're really saying here is that by not giving birthday presents and these rituals, you're not protected from these demons.
That's what they want. They don't want you protected. No, I'm joking. They don't believe in demons in that way, in the way of a demon being able to possess somebody that is a believer. Does that make sense? If you're strong in what is known as the truth, being a strong witness with a close relationship to Jehovah, you wouldn't be able to be attacked by the demons. That's one of the teachings. So,
have you ever met somebody who's been attacked by a demon?
Not attacked. I know people that have said they've had contact with demons in like chairs flying across rooms and things falling through the ceiling, that kind of thing.
This just sounds like domestic violence, not so much demons.
Exactly. No, they believe that happens, but they don't believe that witnesses can be possessed, so to speak. But I know plenty that claim that this happens.
So you're quite young.
Yeah.
And you still live at home. You're dependent upon your parents, who are both Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
How's that going?
Well, it is difficult. I also have a younger sister who I'm more worried about than them in certain ways. But they obviously are curious as to what I believe and why I believe it now, which is not in a God. And they wonder how that has happened. So they'll often ask me questions. My dad is more... He's closed-minded, but he's open to the opinion, whereas my mum's more like, I'll say something like, I can't believe in Adam and Eve because evolution is as close to a fact as we can expect, beyond reasonable doubt. And she'll go off about how evolution isn't a fact and saying that monkeys never give birth to human babies. And
is she a fan of Ray Comfort's work?
Deeper comfort, masters of the universe.
It's exactly the same in the Witnesses as Ray Comfort's view. It's
deeper comfort, masters of the universe.
It can't be true because you can't prove it. You can't do it in front of me right now, and it's a completely twisted view of evolution. Like they're right about what they say about it. Like there's no way that these things can happen, but that's because you've been taught the wrong thing. This is not what evolution says, and I'm going to try and explain that to you. But explaining it to them can be like stabbing yourself in the eye with a nail. It just doesn't really go anywhere with my mum especially. She's not so open to any sort of idea about evolution.
So how's the relationship with your parents changed?
In a weird way, I think my mum respects me more. From the day I told her that I didn't believe in God, she knew I was serious about it. She knew that wasn't the kind of thing that I would say if I didn't truly believe it or think it. And she's told me that she respects me for sort of standing by that in a sense. Which is good, but at the same time, there's a lot of contention during arguments. They'll get, if you didn't want the witnesses anymore, you should just leave. And she said something quite nasty to me the other day, which I was pretty upset about. We talked about why I didn't disassociate myself, which is the same as disfellowshipping, except you don't do anything wrong. You just say, I don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore, and that's the quote unquote correct course to take, the honourable course to take. But that would mean that none of my family or friends would be able to speak to me. And I said that to her. I said I couldn't disassociate myself because I still love everybody so much. All my old friends, even though they don't talk to me as much anymore.
See, atheists have feelings too.
Yeah, atheists have feelings too. I'm going to tweet that. It's a good. She said to me that I deserved nobody to talk to me. Sort of mid argument about evolution and creation accounts and all sorts of other things that I don't agree with anymore.
That's some powerful
really
indoctrination from a religious viewpoint.
Yeah.
If you can encourage somebody to do that, where it's built to a point where it'll break families, if one person changes their opinion.
If I'd done that, I wouldn't be able to talk to her. I mean, if I moved out, which obviously is a possibility, a young adult, but if I moved out, I would never be able to talk to her again, or my dad again, or my little sister, or anybody that I'd ever known. And that is, for her to say that was exceptionally difficult to sort of deal with. Like, you don't really get trained to cope with that kind of thing coming from your own mother's mouth.
That would be incredibly difficult to process. There was a recent episode on a Far Superior podcast called The Thinking Atheist with Seth Andrews, where he interviews several ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and one of them has set up several support networks. Yeah. Are you aware of these?
I am aware of these. I also spoke to somebody on one of the Dogma Debate episodes, and he spoke about an ex-witness. I think Jehovah's Witnesses or something, and there's a support group there. I'm still partially indoctrinated too. I don't want to speak to people that would like angry apostate. I still don't want to sort of mingle with them, and I know it's indoctrination. I do know that it's indoctrination.
But it's having a lasting repercussion on you in the same way that child abuse would.
Yeah. Ex-Catholics may be able to associate the fear of hell even after you've given up the belief in God. You still might be afraid of hell. It's that kind of thing entirely. And part of me wants to keep, because I'm not disassociated, because I'm not disfellowshipped, I can still speak to witnesses sort of every now and again. I have to have very limited contact with anybody from the congregation. It has to be limited, or else I put myself in a position to get disfellowship. But when I do speak to people and they say the reason that you left was probably because of some hard time that I was going through, because my last few years have been a bit rough, and you just want to sin maybe, and that kind of thing. I like to be able to take a bit of a moral high ground and be able to say, no, I'm not actually sinning at all. I'm not doing any of the things that you prohibit, other than maybe drinking a bit too much. Like that's as far as I'd probably go.
You're a young English man, so yeah.
Young English. We are all like Hitch. We all like whiskey and that kind of alcohol. So it's nice to be able to take a little bit of moral high ground. Like, no, I'm not talking to apostates, ex-Jehovah's Witness apostates anyway. I guess I want to still be able to say that, but you're right. I should really look into it and try and get myself some support.
You'll make some good new friends, at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, everybody on the Twitter sphere is pretty awesome. I've made a few good friends on there.
Well, let's talk about that. What are your impressions of the atheist community overall?
Absolutely fantastic. You spoke about the atheist experience. That was one of the first atheistic things that I ever got into. It happened
apostate material.
Yeah, apostate material. Okay. The atheist experience was one of the first things that I saw from the atheist community, and it was so loving. Like really, Seth Andrews is one of the most genuine people sort of out there. So
the Atheist Experience is the one with Matt Dillahunty, where he gets quite angry and yells at people. So as you were saying that, I thought, hang on,
right, yeah.
There's very little about Matt Dillahunty that comes across as loving.
Apparently he's a good magician. That's No, you're right, yeah, sorry. The Thinking Atheist was one of the first things in the atheist community that I stumbled across on my YouTube channel Travels. And he was so nice and so genuine that it was a very easy way to sort of ease into an atheistic worldview, that people aren't, as soon as you leave God, you don't just become an idiot. Like, you don't just fight for your own survival and, you know, your own needs and things. You do care about other people. I spoke to my uncle quite early on when I was having a lot of doubts, and he said, if I was not a witness, if I didn't believe in God, I would be an appalling person. You know, I would do things just to make myself happy. I wouldn't care about anybody else. It would just be all about me. And I was like, well, I don't think I would be. I don't have any interest in doing that kind of thing. I want to make the most good for the most amount of people that I can possibly reasonably do. And
I'll just make one point. I mean, I think the reason Seth Andrews is so appealing, there's several. One is when he speaks, he's got this lovely voice. I suspect he's got about 16 testicles. Secondly, he's an ex-believer himself.
Yeah.
And quite passionate about it, or was, and a professional in that field. So he has done 30-odd years of radio broadcasting on a Christian network. So he can relate.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, the difference between what you think when you think atheist and what is actual reality within atheists. And especially, like you say, Seth Andrews with his magical tones of loveliness. He soothes you in a loving way that really does appeal to you when you have a preconceived idea about what atheist means and what would happen to you if you stop believing in God.
Well, the preconceived idea about atheism is really what you've been given from your previous community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not, in fact, true at all.
The opposite. When people are atheists, they are much more likely to be humanist. They don't have dogmas that allow them to look at people in Africa and say, well, they've got it really harsh now, but there's a paradise earth waiting for them when they die. So if they die, it's kind of okay. People in the atheist and secular and humanist realm go, no, it's not. This isn't okay. We need to take action against this right now, because this is all that people have got, this one life. So we have to help, and that's hugely appealing to me. That's how I sort of always was. I was like, well, I really, although things will be better in the future, when I was a believer, I used to think that it's still not okay that they suffer now, because I don't like suffering. And, I'd give to charity and be I don't want to, I sound like I'm singing my own praises, but I always tried to be the best that I could be. But
within the confines of the system that was there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you always second guess yourself when you do something nice. You always have this feeling of nice, like, I've made someone else have a slightly better day. I've made them, I've given them something they wouldn't have been able to have without me. And also, hey, look, I'm storing up treasures in heaven. I'm doing something, and God will see it, and that's great. That's also good. So there was always an extra sort of thing. But when you step away from that, and you think that there's no God, you're no longer doing it for that reason. You're doing it because you're a good person, and that's been one of the things that's sort of helped me through the quite depressing phase of losing religion, I guess.
Well, let's talk about the depression. What are the symptoms that have presented there?
To sum up, CBA, I just can't be bothered to do anything. Like, everything is just a drag. That's I think of doing something and I just lack motivation to do it. I don't have any get up and go that I used to have. And that's been, and that again, once you stop doing lots of things that usually you would do, you then don't want to do other things, and then you don't want to do other things, and you don't want to do other things. And I'm self-employed, so I'll wake up at 8 and I'll think, right, get up to work, and then it's, but I can't be bothered, and I get feelings of what I guess is depression, and then I don't want to go to work, and then it'll be 9, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning by the time I maybe get myself out to work, if I do at all, and then I can't even be bothered to work when I do get to work. So then you start struggling financially, I guess. That's what I'm saying. So it's difficult on a professional level to be a professional, to do your work. And then also within hobbies and stuff, like I used to play football 3 times a week with the witnesses, and then I stopped when I stopped associating with them so much. And then I was like, well, I'll join a football league. You know, there's plenty of five-a-side places around where I live, so I'll go and I'll get myself into a team, and that'll be cool. And then I never did that, and then I can't be bothered to do it now, even though I know it would be good. I just can't be bothered. And I used to play guitar. I couldn't put it down, and now I don't play it anywhere near as much, just because I'm unmotivated to do so. I'm just not motivated in the same way that I used to be before I started feeling depressed, I guess.
When you leave, you're finding it difficult to fill the gaps.
Yes. To give a brief sort of overview of the way that your social life works as a Jehovah's Witness, you go through school and you get on with a few people at school, but you never really make an effort because they're school friends, and you're just encouraged to not spend time with them outside of school, and so you never do, and you never try and build relationships with them. But you'll have friends in the congregation. You'll have friends that are also Jehovah's Witnesses, and you'll build up good friendships with them, which sort of last through primary school, through secondary school, and they're sort of lifelong friends. And you don't have friends that aren't Jehovah's Witnesses when you're a Jehovah's Witness, really. You might have the occasional person that you see a lot, but you almost wouldn't consider them a friend. You don't build the same kind of relationship. If, as a witness, you always have something to talk about with other witnesses. So socializing is very easy. You're accepted by everybody as a default. You know, nobody's excluded from groups unless they're exceptionally weird, I guess. It's a very loving community. And then when you leave, everything is taken away from you. Friends that I would go and see one of my friends religiously once every 2 weeks, sometimes once a week. He lived half an hour away from me, and I'd drive up and see him. I'd stay at his house most weekends. You know, we'd go out, we'd do all sorts of things, play football together. He was the singer in my band, and like my best friend. And then I told him that, look, I don't believe it anymore. And he said to me that he was going to have to cut association down to a minimal. And going from being your best friend to somebody that might talk to you if you call them up, or if they call you once every 3 months or something, is that you lose everything. You lose the things which are most important to you. For me, relationships with people have always been the most important thing in my life, second only to God, to Jehovah. So I lost the two most important things sort of simultaneously through having basically one thought process.
By being the only support network, it makes for a very unappealing option to leave. Exactly. Fortunately, I guess honesty is taught as one of the most important things as a Jehovah's Witness. Honesty is the best policy. It's if you love people, you'll be honest with them, even if it hurts them temporarily. Like for now, short-term pain, long-term gain.
Exactly, and you there's no point lying anyway because Jehovah will know it all. So you may as well just be honest about everything. So it instills a level of honesty in you, and I've always tried to be as honest as I can, and that is something that's now built in me, probably because of the religion. And then I had to be honest when I decided that, well, when I was convinced that it wasn't correct, that I had to be honest. I couldn't lie and go to meetings and token field service and that kind of thing. It just wasn't. We'll
get to the field service because that just fascinates me. But one little point on honesty. There's different types of honesty. There's being honest to the people around you, and there's being honest with yourself.
Yes.
Do you think the Jehovah's Witnesses are really being honest with themselves?
I don't. I'm really thinking about it because I don't want to just make a sweeping statement. Do I believe that they believe? Yes. Do I believe that they analyze what they believe against the Bible? Yes. I honestly believe that they believe that. But when you bring them out of the Bible, when you say sort of, okay, well, let's look at evolution, then they're not honest. Then they will be dishonest, but they're lying to themselves. It's not that they're lying to you. They just have this, I think it's called cognitive dissonance. I could be wrong about that. Is that?
Yeah. Persuading yourself to believe in something that rationally you wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. But because it's so indoctrinated, they genuinely believe this thing that Adam and Eve were created as humans, separate from animal creation. they believe this, that when they are presented with evidence for it, they don't accept the evidence. So they're not being honest towards the evidence, but they're being honest within themselves. I don't know if that makes sense, but it did in my head.
In your head. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Well, apparently so.
So let's talk about door knocking.
Okay, that was fun.
How? Because you have quotas to meet, do you not, as a Jehovah's Witness?
Okay, you have, if you don't go out on the field service for 1 hour a month, you get reported as inactive, which doesn't have really any consequences other than it's more difficult for you to be promoted to, say, to be a ministerial servant or an elder, which is like the priests of the Jehovah's Witnesses. They'll look back a certain amount of time, and if you've been inactive, they'll say you need to have not been inactive for this long. Then there's the rank and file, the what's known as publishers, which is sort of people that will do at least an hour a month. So there's inactive people who don't go on the ministry, people that do at least an hour on the ministry a month. Most people, as a general rule of thumb, will go out for an hour to an hour and a half every week on a Saturday morning usually. So they'll do between sort of 4 to 8 hours a month. And then there is auxiliary pioneers who it's like a contract that you can pick up and drop as and when it's convenient to your situation. So and they have 50 hours to do. If you say I want to be an auxiliary pioneer for the month of December, then in December you'd have to do 50 hours of ministry. There's no punishment for not doing it, but it's expected of you.
Right.
And then there's regular pioneers who, statistically, I guess, are more likely to be the ones that are calling on you if it's not a Saturday morning. And these are, for a year, you dedicate yourself to doing 70 hours a month, or the total of 70 hours a month, so times it by 12, and that's how many hours you have to do that year. Again, there's no punishment for not doing it. It's not like you'll be disfellowshipped for not doing it, but if you consistently miss your hours, then the elders will speak to you and say,
tut, tut, tut.
Tut, but, are you okay? Are you still okay, sort of, with the commitment that you've made? And they're very loving about it. It's because pioneering isn't something that's required. It's not enforced with sort of by a hammer. It's kind of, if you can't do it, but you intended to do it to Jehovah, that's just as good. But if you could do it, that would be great.
Gives you an easy out.
Yeah, I guess so. But because you don't want to disappoint, the niceties, the lovingness is as pressurizing as somebody coming and shouting at you, if not more so.
So how much of this have you been doing in your past, and from what age?
I got baptized at 16. And so I did auxiliary pioneering twice, I think, since then. And I was always against the idea of being a pioneer. I wasn't always against it. It was something that I guess I developed a distaste for. I didn't like the fact that there was sort of this slightly more elite publisher, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. We're all doing our best. These people, they've made a good commitment that they'll do this, but why do we have to know that? It's not that I don't care that people do the ministry, but I don't see why somebody that's doing 70 hours a month is better than somebody that's doing the best that they can 2 hours a month. If that's all that someone's able to do, it's to make a distinction between the two, which is the reality of pioneering. That sat against what I felt about God. I didn't think that God would particularly like that. But it's a good way of making people do 70 hours a month. If you want it preached, then give them an incentive and they'll do it.
Okay, from an outsider looking in, I look at this door-to-door sales pitching or the ministry work. Look at it from a business viewpoint. Have you considered this?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're effectively doing door-to-door sales. You're selling a belief system to grow the business overall.
Mm-hmm. It's canvassing. I'm a window cleaner. Any ex-Jehovah's Witnesses listening won't be surprised by that at all, because that's sort of the default job. As a window cleaner, if I wanted more work, I would go and do essentially the same thing that I would do when I was on the ministry. And that's exceptionally clear. When you start doing canvassing, you realize that you are literally going from door to door saying, hi, I'm a window cleaner in your area. Would you like that? Have you got a window cleaner? Would you like a window cleaner? And it's very similar to, hi, we're Jehovah's Witnesses and we're calling around with this, trying to, they'll say we're not trying to convert people, but that's the goal. And you know that as a Jehovah's Witness, you do know that the idea is to get a Bible study and to get that Bible study to baptism. That's sort of the ultimate goal, and that's what they're doing. They know that, and they know it's fairly business oriented, all the same.
In your work doing the ministry door to door, Did you ever have any successes?
No. I was never that diligent with returning to people who showed interest. Being younger, sort of, than most people I was calling on, I would feel like I was a bit of a child trying to tell an adult something. I was always just, here's some, like, I'd leave people literature. I would say, here's, the Watchtower Awake magazine, and, there's some information in here you might find interesting, and leave them with it. I felt like I didn't have a place to sort of, to force my view on them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I would present information to people, but I was never like, "Oh, you need to do this." Whereas I think that's what you'd have to do
in order to get somebody over the line, to get the sale.
Mm-hmm.
So the trick with sales, coming from this background, is to get people to say yes 3 times and then ask for the sale.
Oh, okay. I think I've heard that before.
And when you're pitching a product, you always discuss the feature, the function, and the benefit. Turn it into a question so the person responds in a positive manner, and then ask for the sale.
Yeah, one of the things that's taught is try and find common ground. So if somebody says, I don't believe in God, you wouldn't go to, well, how can you not believe in God? You'd say, well, looking around at religions around the world, like, I completely understand what you're saying. You'd think that God was atrocious, right? And they would always respond, yeah, religions are terrible, and you'd have something to sort of talk about.
Let's have some fun with this.
Oh, gosh, no.
Yeah. You've just knocked on my door. I'll insert a sound effect. And action. Yeah. Hello?
Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, let's try that again.
No, never start by apologising. It puts you on the back foot. Surely they would have taught you that at the Jehovah's Witness school.
But humility is a quality that people find appealing. I don't know.
So I'm
Probably
told.
Wrong. Okay.
All right, so from the top. Yes, hello.
Hi there, my name's Harley. I'm just calling around with the latest edition of the Watchtower Awake magazine. This version of the Awake is talking about God, and is he a God of love? Is that something that might take your interest?
I'm interested in discussing it, but I must let you know that I'm an atheist. Okay.
What is it that led you to not believe in God?
Well, let's pick the topic of the book that you're promoting this season. Is God a God of love? I, as an atheist, am yet to see any evidence of that.
Okay. How do you feel when you look around at some of the beauty of nature?
I see it for what it is. I see its nature. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It makes you feel happy inside, doesn't it?
Yes, to a degree.
Yeah, so I would say that's a way in which God has proved through creation that he is a God of love.
Right.
Let me show you the scripture that comes from, and I'll get the scripture from inside the Awake magazine. So I've opened up the Awake magazine at this point, and I've pointed to a scripture, and may I read the scripture to you? I don't actually have the scripture.
Would you like to come in out of the snow?
No, we like being cold. It makes people more sympathetic and they'll listen to us.
Right, yes.
No. Yeah, I'd love to come in. We didn't get invited in very often.
So, yeah, well, see, they were quite surprised when I invited them in. But what they did is exactly what you just did. They wanted to quote certain passages from the Bible and really cherry pick to get to a certain point. And that, I found, was, when we're talking about being truthful, I didn't feel they were being truthful to themselves in doing so. Because although you can talk about the God of the Bible being a loving God, there's plenty of stuff in there that just proves otherwise, using the same literature they've got.
You're preaching to the converted.
So to speak.
I completely agree with you.
But one of the books they gave me was How to Read the Bible.
Wow, I don't think I've ever read that, but I'm going to have to look that up. I've never heard of that.
I may be misquoting the title of it, or it's along the lines of how do I interpret what the message is in the Bible, and it's just a way of giving people the tools to provide mental gymnastics themselves to cherry pick.
Okay, I'm really interested to see what this is.
Well, you might be surprised. I might just pop over to England and knock on your door, wear a smart suit and tie, scare some kiddies.
I'd love that. I'd probably invite you in for coffee as well.
Oh, you're very kind.
Come in, let's talk.
Let's talk beliefs.
Beliefs. Oh, yay. I have so many conversations with people that I have to cut off at a certain point because I know I'm becoming the conversation would be considered apostate.
Oh, really?
Now, yeah, quite often. I'm very comfortable talking about science, sort of science versus the Bible and that kind of thing. But as soon as it gets onto morality, that's almost an untouchable subject for me.
See, the guys who popped around to visit me, I was really no holds barred with that.
It's the best way to be with them.
Yes, and they looked really uncomfortable. Like they cracked the cold sweat. But I made sure that they couldn't leave because I'd given them drinks. I'd made them feel welcome.
Yep.
I'd done all the things that a nice human being would do to make them feel welcome, except I challenged what their own governing rules were, their self-governing rules. And that was, I discussed apostate material.
Yeah. They'd probably burn their tongues and get out of there. Just drink that drink down quickly and sort of move on. You live in a bubble in the truth. It's called the truth. I don't know if I've used that expression accidentally, but you'd call being a witness being in the truth. And it comes from the scripture that says, is the way, the truth, and the life. And the first century Christians called them what they believed as the way. And then witnesses now say, we live in the truth, and this is the truth. And then I guess the paradise earth, which is promised for after Armageddon, that would be called the life. And so I don't know why I went down that tangent, but I thought I would. So yeah, when you're in the truth, you live in this bubble, and you might think, I don't really agree with slavery, but it was the time. It was just a different time. And if you want your nation to grow, you have to take the captive women of the other nations in order to grow at an exponential rate, and you have to have lots of wives, and that all that kind of thing. It all gets explained to you in a way that's
easily consumed.
Yeah, exactly. Easily consumed is exactly. It's you can challenge it, and then you can't really challenge the answers. You can't say, well, it doesn't matter what time it was, because what times it was, what the difference in culture was, because what's morally wrong is morally wrong, right?
Well, no, morality changes over time, and it doesn't change at the same pace globally. In Asia, people consider it entirely moral to eat all sorts of different animals, what we would use as household pets over here. Okay, yeah. So,
yeah, no, I get your point. I don't think it's ever really been okay to own a person, though. To kill a whole family.
But yeah, see, you're saying genocide. You're saying this with 21st century morals. The people at the time didn't necessarily know any better. You would expect that an all-loving God would know better.
The laws that they had, though, the commandments, and just use the 10 Commandments, and you can see that it's not okay. You shall not kill is one of the most famous commandments. Killing was clearly wrong. But whether the killing of nations round about was wrong for some reason, I guess with 21st century vision, I have that, but I don't want to worship a God that was ever okay with that.
The benefit of hindsight. Yeah, good point. Yeah. So I wanted to touch upon education, because education is a really tricky one. As a Jehovah's Witness, you're strongly discouraged from seeking any additional education other than that which is required by law in the given country.
Yep. It's the thing that I resent most from being a witness. I would have loved to done a university course. I've always loved science and maths, and I would have happily taken them on at sixth form and then gone to sixth form to university and studied something that really interested me. I always wanted to do that. That was like something that I would have liked, but it was so heavily discouraged that if you were to do it, it would be like ignoring everyone that you loved, saying, look, you don't need it, go to college, get a trade that you can use in, say, construction. I ended up doing an electrical installation course against my will, I guess. I didn't want to do it, but it would have been useful and something that the witnesses were okay with, so I did it. I did do the electrical installation course, but I would have preferred a much more scientific education. I think I would have much preferred that. I'm a fairly mid-level student. I'm nothing particularly exceptional, but my little sister, who is still a witness, she is unbelievably smart and intelligent.
That must be hard to witness, so to speak.
Nice. Yeah, no, it's one of the things that worries me every day. I don't want to see her make the same mistake that I did. I don't want her to have to give up being so much potential. For her, she was like A stars and A's. That's all she got, and she mainly A stars, like A's. And I'd hate to see her just go to sixth form and then get a job, in an office doing something that
doesn't challenge her potential.
Yeah, exactly. And also she's an incredible artist. She's got paintings up all over the house, and she could just as easily do that as she could some much higher education. And
can I give you a little bit of inspiration?
Yeah, please.
There's a gentleman called Dr. Karl Kruzelnitsky in Australia. He's a science communicator.
I'm never going to be able to spell that.
No, in fact, nor can I. But he has this little saying that it's never too late to have a good childhood. So the things that perhaps a secular person has experienced as a child that you've missed out on, or the opportunities that you haven't yet had, it's not too late to have them. And you live in a country with a good medical system, relatively, with a great education system, and you have the potential to go and study further. There was Dr. Matt Hunt, who came on a previous episode. He's a mathematician, specifically studying wave equations and so forth. It was hard work for me to keep up just with the language he used.
Yeah, I remember that.
But he pointed out something similar. I was the only one from my school that decided to go on and get a further education. It's not too late. You have these opportunities now that you've decided to take a little bit of a different turn.
Yeah, it's something that I do intend to get onto some sort of higher education within the next 2 years. But I
mean, the questions you probably get asked regularly are blood transplants. I'm fortunate enough to be, or unfortunate enough, depending on how you look
situation,
at it, to be O negative, which is the universal donor group.
Oh, right. Okay.
So while I can donate blood to anybody, I'm not sure they'd want it, I can only receive blood of my own blood type.
Okay, yeah. I think, I've heard about this before.
Well, I've had family who have had to go in for an operation and sort of been there and offered to be on standby in case they need to hook me up with the jumper leads and, and top somebody up.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not even, like the blood issue isn't at all to do with the medical side of problems or blood types or potential infections. It is literally directly from a scripture which talks about if they only brought certain things forward from the law, which didn't include circumcision, and that's why the elders in first century were discussing it. They said there are only a few things that need to be brought forward from the law, and that's that you don't partake of things sacrificed to idols, from fornication and from blood. So it's entirely doctrinal why they don't partake of blood transfusions.
How are you feeling now that there is no God in your life?
Oh goodness. So about the time that I decided that there was no God, my friend died. He was a very close friend. He was a guitarist in my band. He was only 25 and he died of cancer. And this is sort of the worst case scenario that you can sort of, that I could think of. And it was better knowing that there was no God in that situation than believing in a God allowing it to happen. He had a little brother and his parents buried him, and thinking that there was a God that would allow that is not as nice as you think. Like, to know that everything is just the way it is nice. It's comforting in a sense, I guess, which may be counterintuitive, but that's how I feel anyway.
Oh, well, I'm sorry for your loss.
It's okay. It was a year ago.
All right, so at Secular Lad, thank you very much for coming on and discussing some confidential, top-secret material. The good news is that nobody listens to this show, so, the secret's safe with me.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been good to sort of vent a little bit. I feel like I've been able to open up a little bit about what's happened, which is something that I can't usually do outside of text form. So thank you for listening.
Oh, pleasure. All right, take care, and I'll speak to you on the Twitter sphere.
Excellent. See you again.